What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Dungeon Master Experience. In this video, we're diving into the fantastic Dungeon Master Experience articles by Chris Perkins. He's one of the lead designers of Dungeons & Dragons. We'll explore his invaluable insights and advice to enhance your skills as a Dungeon Master and create unforgettable D&D experiences for your players. What's up, y'all? This article is called Voice Talent, and it's from July 21st, 2011. This is actually the 23rd article in this series, and if you'd like to watch them all, they're going to be in a playlist in the description. So by the looks of it, looks like this article is going to be about voice talent and making funny voices and stuff like that, which is a fan favorite. So let's see where old Chris takes this topic. Here we go. Monday night. The heroes are sailing aboard their elemental ship, the Maelstrom, when suddenly Captain Uriel, played by Nick DiPetrello, receives a sending stone message from his mentor and benefactor, Sea King Valcroy. Word has come down that Sea King Sinistrago, Valcroy's hated rival and sometimes campaign villain, has been killed off camera in a naval battle. To deliver this great news, I conjure up the very best Jamaican accent I can muster. Suddenly, Nick gives me a quizzical look and says, "Doesn't Valcroy have an Australian accent?" So that's a short and sweet lore dump. This article is definitely going to be about accents and things like that. Let's continue. Crikey, Nick's right. I've gotten my accents and NPCs mixed up. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, I'm horribly dismayed. I use a Jamaican accent for exactly one character in my campaign, a drow crime lord named Malik Du Mavian. You'd think I would remember that, and for those who read last week's article about names, this one's pronounced Malik Du Mavian. Truth be told, even good DMs have their bad moments, and when it comes to voice acting, I'm at best an amateur. Before I dive headlong into this short discussion about using voices to bring NPCs to life, let me tell you about my recent encounter with a god among voice talent artists. And we got a really cool piece of art here of a ship with some sort of twisted water tornado swirling above the deck. Very cool. Last month, to cap off a very pleasurable experience at Comic Palooza at Houston, I shared a limo ride to the airport with voice actor and professional announcer Tom Kane. And the link in the PDF actually works. It goes to tomkane.com. Here's Tom Kane. Very cool. I think this is the first link in any of these articles that actually did something. So that's fun. We joked about flying cars and why humans should never be allowed to have them. I'm sure it sounded grand back in the 1950s when futurists first postulated the notion, but imagine someone's half-eaten Big Mac, leaky antifreeze, or rusted out muffler dropping on your head from a height of 100 feet. That's not progress, people. As we talked and joked, Tom let a bit of Admiral Ulu'ar from the Clone Wars animated series slip into the discussion. I was also treated to a wee bit of Yoda and a few other characters in Tom's vast repertoire. The voices came out offhandedly and effortlessly, and at that point I realized we had more in common than successful careers in the fringes of entertainment. Tom was doing something I like to do in my D&D sessions and in real life. Change voices in conversation, usually for comedic effect, only he was doing it really well. He is, after all, the professional, and I'm just an amateur. I'm not selling myself short here. After all, being an amateur isn't the same thing as being a novice, as evidenced by the fact that I have more than 20 years of experience making up voices in my D&D campaign. The fact that I don't get paid for my voice talent is why I'm not a professional, and frankly, I'm not sure I have the chops for that line of work. Voice acting requires serious training. However, I am Canadian, which means I can do a passable Canadian accent on command. I can also riff on 2d6 plus 7 other real-world accents because I watch lots of TV and movies. The key word here is riff, because I'm not sure I can do any accent justice. My German accent makes it seem like I'm mocking Germans. You know what I mean, yeah? Ditto with French, Spanish, Cajun, Russian, Scottish, Jamaican, Australian, Bostonian, Minnesotan, Texan, and so on. Anyone who's seen all 4 Pirates of the Caribbean movies and all 8 Harry Potter films should be able to conjure up one or more fake British accents. Unless, of course, the person is genuinely British, in which case one would assume it comes naturally. Back in my day, we got our British accents from Austin Powers. If you can't, it's probably because your lips were sewn on upside down. Don't know what that means. That's a weird thing to say. However, unless you're a gifted mimic with a trained ear, the voice you hear when you speak is not the same voice everyone else hears around you. Also, when you record videos of you reading stuff and then playing it back to edit it, you'll learn that real fast. But you actually get used to it. It's kind of interesting. I've done a lot of podcasts, and every time I listen to myself, I feel like I'm hearing a stranger talk. My recorded voice does not sound like the voice echoing in my head when I speak aloud. Consequently, when I do an impression of a famous person like Jack Nicholson, or a famous character like Foghorn Leghorn, the voice that I ultimately create isn't exactly one or the other. It sounds similar, but not exactly the same. It is, for all intents and purposes, derivative, and that's perfect. I don't want Jack Nicholson playing a part in my campaign, but I want a character inspired by him. I don't want Foghorn Leghorn either. I want a ruthless sea captain with a lot of southern bluster, or a talking stone face carved into a wall that thinks it knows everything. So if we're going to make all of our NPCs based off of movie character impersonations and quotes, I guess I'm going to have a campaign full of Napoleon Dynamite and Wayne and Garth and that one guy on Star Wars that says, "You may fire when ready." Oh yeah, and of course on Stargate, the one guy that's like, "Chevron 7 locked." Moving on. Let the mutilation begin. It's perfectly fine to mutilate real-world accents. So what if your Maine accent doesn't sound like a real Maine accent? It's not like your campaign is set in Maine, after all. The players won't hate you because your rendition failed to conjure memories of summers spent in Bangor. In my campaign, I have no qualms about looting regionally distinctive dialects, inflections, and idioms. So what if my tiefling henchman sounds like a caricature of a Boston thug? My players remember him. He's the hot ass with the big fat mouth. No offense to Bostonians. Rad Longhammer, the new intern of Acquisitions Incorporated, sounds like a Californian surfer dude, or at least my imitation of one, and he earned more than his fair share of laughs at PAX last year. And then we have a picture of, it looks like a gibbering mouther ball floating, kind of, and it has different movie quotes coming out of it. It puts the potion in the basket, "Good evening," and "I'll be back." So as I guess it's trying to represent like an amalgamation of movie voices and stuff like that you're going to put into your campaign. Here we go. Continuing on. In my Monday night campaign, I have a reoccurring NPC named Rutha. She's a fat dragonborn military general who really knows how to throw her weight around. When I speak in her voice, I automatically stick out my pouty lower lip, talk as deeply as I can, and enunciate every syllable slowly as though she was the long-lost dragonborn sister of Alfred Hitchcock. Then I make each word its own sentence. That got kind of annoying even after one sentence, guys. I don't think I'm going to do that. Not surprisingly, General Rutha is one of the most memorable villains in the Io Mandra campaign. It's also easy for me to remember what her voice sounds like because my entire posture changes whenever I get into character. I slouch in my chair and talk down my nose, imbuing her with a certain air of contempt. Did I mention that DMing is 1 part acting, 1 part directing, and 2 parts improvisation? I think it's about 9 parts improv and 1 part everything else. I have another Dragonborn NPC who bears the scar of having had his throat cut, and he speaks with a harsh whisper, simple yet effective. I typically reserve new voices, as opposed to higher pitched, lower pitched, faster paced, and slower paced versions of my natural voice for important characters. My campaign has thousands of NPCs, and it would be physically exhausting and mentally taxing to give each one a distinctive voice. My players can usually guess the relative importance of an NPC by the extents to which I describe the character and tinker with the voice. If my description of the NPC is threadbare and the character speaks in my own voice, more or less, the players know they're probably dealing with a one-off NPC of little consequence. If the NPC instead sounds like Rosa Klebb in From Russia with Love, or Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs, their expectations are immediately inflated. I rarely forget which voice to use, but it happens, as evidenced by my recent misstep with Sea King Valcroy. To my credit, Sea King Valcroy was envisioned as a particularly important NPC in the Monday Night campaign, but because of the direction the campaign went, he's been more of a background figure who pops up infrequently. I still feel like a balloon head, however. That's interesting. He's talking about how if he adds extra effort to the NPC's voice, the players know that this is a very important NPC versus a throwaway, which maybe sometimes you want that effect, sometimes you don't. It kind of reminds me of read aloud text that comes in the boxes of modules and stuff like that. You know, little text boxes that occur in modules of read aloud text. Sometimes that read aloud text will describe the door a little too much and the players will know it's a special door or something like that. I could kind of see getting that effect if you went overkill on a voice for a character that didn't matter or something like that. It might lead the characters on a little bit of a side tangent, but you know what? That's okay. Just have fun, guys. Make funny voices. Moving on. Lessons learned. One of the most effective ways to make an NPC memorable, after giving him or her a distinctive physical trait, quirk, or habit, is to give him or her a voice inspired by a real-world or fictional character. Any person or character with a cool voice or trademark affectation is fair game. Antonio Banderas, Anthony Hopkins, Katharine Hepburn, Norman, the Loons, Alan Rickman, James Cagney, and Throw Mama from the Train, Ramsey, Peter Lorre, Vince Price, Christopher Walken, Cheech Marin, Zsa Zsa Gabor, Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you're looking for something more exaggerated, try riffing on a character like Zap Brannigan, Yosemite Sam, Jessica Rabbit, Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. Everybody knows where Gaston's from, by the way. Ren from Ren and Stimpy, or Vizzini and Fezzik, played by Wallace Shawn and Andre the Giant from The Princess Bride. I occasionally come up with voices in the moment, particularly when I'm forced to breathe life into an NPC on the fly. Although I admit those aren't always the most successful. Sometimes the accent is too difficult or too hard to sustain. I once tried to make a villain sound like Dr. Claw from the Inspector Gadget cartoons, but my throat simply wasn't up to it. Sometimes the voice just sounds horrid, and so I end up jettisoning it or wearing down the edges so that it becomes a bit more palatable. I get what he's saying, like kind of soften it up, don't go so hard, so deep in the paint with it, just back off a little bit. I like to rehearse voices ahead of time. My three-legged dog Reggie tolerates it during long walks through the backwoods, where no one else can hear me. A typical rehearsal is basically 5 minutes of me trying to imitate some TV or movie villain, such as Ralph Fiennes' Voldemort or Bill Nighy's Davy Jones, and maybe twisting it up in some way to make it sound female, for example. That's a cool idea. So imagine taking like Arnold, but like making the female version of Arnold Schwarzenegger for your, halfling paladin or something. That'd be pretty sweet. Here are some things worth remembering as you fearlessly experiment with voices of your own. Think of an actor whose voice you like. Try to imitate it, and no matter what the quality, you're going to end up with a new character voice that is all your own. Often, a bad accent is better than no accent at all, and it doesn't need to be over the top to be memorable. Change the shape of your mouth. Try speaking with your teeth bared, your lips puckered, or your tongue firmly pressed against your lower gums. It sounds stupid, but it works. There are scores of other tips and tricks. Had my limo ride to the airport been a few minutes longer, I would have pestered Mr. Kane for some voice acting advice to step up my game. If you have some tips and tricks of your own, I'd love to hear about them. Until the next encounter. Heck yeah, guys, that was a fun one. That one had so many different pop culture references and different actors and TV shows and stuff like that in this article. That is like a nostalgia bomb kind of, because you just think about, oh, this and that and all the different voices. The main takeaway I'm going to get from this is, to pick an actor whose voice you like and then try to imitate it. And then no matter what you do, even if you mess it up and you're horrible, it's still a different voice than your regular voice. So it's going to be a unique character. If you're still here, I really appreciate you. And I'd invite you to hit the like button so that the algorithm can find more awesome people like you to recommend the video to. Again, the playlist for this series is in the description. This is the 23rd part, so I've already made 22 of these things. I'm recording this on the 4th of July, so I'm about to go eat some good food and pop some firecrackers. Y'all have a great day. See ya.